Hello, how are you?
Hi there. Hi, everybody out there in the cosmic world.
It's nice to see you
Welcome
again.
back. It's good to see you too.
Our theme today for episode 3 is Shadow and Light Overcoming Fear in a Chaotic World.
Yes, and John, just to jump right in, I've got some significant thoughts I want to offer as a framework for us in working with this. This does very much come from my work with Asian studies, Asian philosophies, and the concept of the yin yang symbol. So, how the yin yang symbol it's a circle. One side is white or light, and one side is dark or black, and inside each of those sections, there is a round circle of the opposite color, this balance. And to me, that represents this concept that shadow and light, shadow and light coexist to make one whole experience. And I had this really significant moment when I was at a presentation with a channeler that I follow, and his guides came through and they said, the human existence is one of duality. Accept that. That doesn't mean that you have to accept all of the negative things about it, but it's that concept of like this, while we are a divine spark embodied in a human body having this experience on this physical plane, shadow and light are a part of the experience. It's a part of the duality. So to take out the good versus bad, light is good, shadow is bad, that and when we talk about shadow work, we are here. I'm laughing because I always reference this. Did you read the fine print? We are here every morning when you wake up and you are on this physical plane. We are here to work through the lessons of working with energy and consciousness and raising consciousness and transforming energy within the duality. That does not mean we are supposed to suffer or experience trauma or any of those kinds of things. It doesn't justify the kinds of things that come out of a lower, darker vibrational energy. But by acknowledging that shadow and light, darkness and light is a part of this universal balance by design, in this particular context, in this state, in this dimension with which we are in, again, read the fine print, you signed up. I like to just offer that as a framework so that we understand that.
I love that. Thank you.
So for you, what do you see as within that shadow? There are elements of the shadow. I just did this little post the other day for my astrology post, and I was talking about there are things I love about the nighttime. I love the stars. You don't see shooting stars and get to make a wish if it's not dark out. The moon, shining at night, and those are elements. Those are those little dots of light that are there in the dark. But I also like the quiet and the stillness. And so there are elements of the shadow, that the mystery of it, that are very inviting to me. But then there are also those elements where the shadow element is hard to deal with. There's fears in there. So how do you discern between the fears that are holding you back and the fears that are there to inform you, to warn you of what you need to be aware of?
Sure. So yeah, there are definitely like fears that protect us, and then we have the fears that limit us. And distinguishing those two is super important. Like if I have an intense fear of heights, and I consider that a fear that protects me because I'm never going to get too far to the physical cliff where I'm going to like be in danger. Or I have a really healthy fear of the ocean where we have some intense rip currents on our coast here, and I think that keeps me safe and it keeps me alive. So distinguishing those immediate fears that keep us healthy and alive versus the ones that are limiting us and holding us back is super important. Often I think those protective fears are really like sharp and immediate, and the limiting fears are persistent, nagging. They're more of like an emotional fear. And when we can think about that and think about where we're allowing self-doubt or avoidance or this resistant to change to hold us back, then we can really do some really wonderful things because we realize that those limiting fears are all a lie. They're all in our head. Understanding that gives us permission to really step out of our comfort zone and face those fears. Do you have any experiences where you have dealt with fear, and how have you shifted that fear into transformation?
Yes, yeah. A number of years ago, I made the decision to come out. My daughter and son-in-law live here in Portland. We've spent a lot of time out here since they moved out here, and we've been interested in the possibility of being out here. And a year or two after the pandemic, particularly because we couldn't travel out here, I just decided that not only did I want to come out and visit, but I also wanted to explore what it would be like to be here, like throughout an entire year. I'd only ever been here at a certain time of the year. So, rather than flying across the country and then just, sort of being here I decided to pack up my Toyota RAV and drive across the country. And people were like, oh my God, are you crazy? You're going to be driving, you're going to be alone and everything else. I was not afraid. I was like, I am never alone. And I honestly do really believe that. I am not alone. And I did not fear any fear about that. But there were moments on the road trip where there were certain things where, for example, the time of year that I was driving was like early November. I had planned to go early, and for various reasons, I left later. So I knew that as I was traveling across country, there was a certain point where I'm going to have to drive through the mountains in order to get to the West Coast, and I am watching very carefully the weather. There are these weather apps, and I don't mean just like the local weather. As someone who does a lot of camping and hiking in the Adirondacks, I know how to read like NOAA weather reports, like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric, Association, and National Weather Service. I have apps on my phone that are set, for storm warnings. If I'm hiking up a mountain, all of a sudden there's an alert. I might turn around and not finish that hike because if there's severe weather coming, I don't want to be on the top of the mountain when it hits or try to get back down, right? I don't get stuck up there. So while I was traveling across the country, that was like one of my really key things to rely on. And there were a couple times where I woke up, going to have to think about that, make some decisions. But most recently in the news, there has been some rather alarming for me reports that this very critical emergency service that we have has been the subject of very, very severe and, in my personal opinion, questionable cutbacks. The National Weather Service and NOAA are globally and across political lines, recognized as one of the most important, efficient, well operated scientific sources of information that we have. It basically puts out information that saves lives. It is basically responsible for weather reports that determine flight paths so that planes can fly safely, And the thought that that might be dramatically affected just literally gutted me. Just gutted me. And I kid you not, I felt that in my gut. And not just because, I'm thinking to myself a few days ago, I've got to get on a plane a couple days. And I went into a spiral. Do I cancel my flight? Do I delay it? What do I do? Da 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 this. I've got to go back. I've got this going on of it, I've got and then it hit me. I've got tickets to a concert I really want to go to. And then I got mad. So I had to sit down. I had to stop, sit down, put on hold what I was going to do that morning, and sit down because I knew that this was like stirring inside of me. It was so visceral. It was such a gut feeling that I was not going to be able to function and do the things I wanted to do that day or needed to do that day. Not that it was anything really important. We're talking about grocery shopping, laundry, going to the library to print something out, very simple things, right? But I'm like, I can't function. I can't think. I needed to sit down and really go deep into that stillness. What is this fear? And in the core of it, it's like I won't be safe, and the feeling that my freedom to travel is being taken away, and this feeling of not feeling safe, caused me to really go deep and question. Girl, you drove across the country. You had to make several critical decisions at a certain point. Am I taking at this point from this place where I've stopped for the night? Am I taking this route next or this route? Which way am I going? And each decision along the way would affect the next decision and the next decision, and ultimately determine which mountains I was going to be crossing, coming across. And at certain times, I had to just really sort of go with an instinct of like, should I go this way? If I go this way, how does this feel? Hmm, not sure. If I take this route, how does this feel? Oh, this feels better. I can trust this. That's kind of a steeper mountain pass, but I trusted my instinct. So it was that ability. And this is, I literally had to do this. I had to sit down and I had to say to myself, sit down and say to myself, I need to connect with my guides. I need to connect with my angels. You were talking in our last episode, we talked about color. I surrounded myself with the most beautiful, soft, comforting, white blanket of white light. Just being in that really, really warm space, and just said, I just need to know. I just need the assurance. The only thing I need to know is that it's okay for me to take this next trip. I'm not going to future jump. That's the other thing. Stop future jumping. Well, then this is going to happen, and I have a road trip planned to go see national parks later this year. Is it stop? Bring it all back in. And that's how I managed to deal with that fear. It took a while. It took me probably a good 30 minutes of really just sitting, pulling some cards, really just focusing, writing, journaling, writing, getting it all out. This is the fear. What if this, getting it all out. But then really allowing myself to come back to peace. And every now and then it comes up again. I'm just like, but remember, your guide said, we're with you. You are never alone. We will keep you safe, and to just make the choice from that place to respond and make the decisions from that place of recognizing the fear for what it was, not poo pooing it, not trying to bury it, not trying to say, oh, you just say lots of positive affirmations, everything will be okay. That's a part of it. Yes, I am safe, I am held, I am free to travel. But I have to get to the place where I can believe those words when I say them. And that's how I got through that. How about
Yeah,
you?
I think it's so relatable what you're talking about because right now we have like our queer friends and family are scared, our immigrant friends are scared. Like it's with the cuts to the FAA, like is it safe to fly? Like we're seeing like all of these plane crashes on the news and we're just getting bombarded with all of these messages that instill fear. I definitely don't think avoiding the fear is the best thing to do, but really like connecting with it and assessing it and as you did is so important and then figuring out how we can use the fear and the use it as a method of inspiration toward our next action. We can't just if we think about it too much or if we're really just like connecting too much with the darkness instead of the light, then it's crippling. It can become impossible to move forward. But we're called on to proceed and we have to just one step at a time just think about like that step. So as you are navigating the mountains or if we think about walking through a dark forest and you're using your flashlight and you just have to trust that your one step at a time is going to guide you in the right direction. That is where I think we make progress and how we really make change is by not allowing the fear to hold us back, but instead to motivate our positive steps forward and to fuel our light and to allow us to shine our light even brighter.
Mm.
So you're into astrology. I have been dying to know why collectively is the energy so intense right now.
Well, I have a really good answer for that. And let me frame this by just saying, for people to know that my approach to astrology, number one, is recognizing that what we are looking at are symbols that are representative of energy that exists. Just like if you were to look at a chemical formula, you know, H2O. What's H2O? Water. We drink it every day. So it's symbolic of, we don't think about there's, this balance of hydrogen and oxygen in this sip of water that I'm taking. You will now. The next sip you take, you'll be like, oh, okay. But it's symbolic, okay? That it's symbolic. And the existence of these cycles, these planetary cycles, the phases of the moon, is representative of the ebb and flow of energy. It's a beautiful representation. It's a beautiful reminder to us that there's a dark phase of the moon, and then the moon comes back, and this too shall pass. And then the energy peaks, and then there's a time of integration, and the energy, ebbs, ebb and flow like the tides. So for me, astrology, which is something I discovered in my teens, interestingly enough, when I was researching a paper on the history of astronomy and found out that thousands of years ago, they were not two separate things. They were and that astrology, true astrology, is based on millennial, thousands and thousands of years of data, actual data, that when these particular configurations or energy patterns exist, the potential, and this is key to how I practice astrology, the potential for these things exists, and it's borne out. Okay, I have yet to convince my very tech minded, scientific minded husband that this is, in fact, a science, and I get that. Or Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's always funking it. But that's my approach to astrology. So when I look at it, when I look at somebody's birth chart, or when I look at a chart of the moment, I have an app on my computer that I can just click it, and it tells me here's the energy pattern in the moment. What I am looking at is symbolic of certain types of energy. Mercury represents something. Venus represents something. The inner planets of Mercury, Venus, and Mars represent our personal experience, as does our sun and moon. And the outer planets from Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and some of the smaller asteroids that us other astronomers also work with, they represent our external experience. So why are things so intense? Because right now there are patterns in place, specifically with the external planets. Some of these planets, or some of these patterns, have not. We have some of almost all of the patterns as they exist at this moment together collectively all at once are something that none of us have ever experienced in our lifetime. As a matter of fact, when you take the whole combination of all of the different patterns at once, this is an energetic pattern that has not existed. That there's one pattern that goes back 500 years. There's another pattern that goes back 1200 years. So we're talking about a really significant moment in the human experience that is a turning point. What will we individually and collectively decide to do as all of these things, there are, cycles, and we talk about the tides coming in and going out. We talk about, you see how waterfalls, for example, weather rocks away to create this beautiful gorge or cavern, chasm that it flows through. Rivers change course when there's a shift on the patterns on the earth. And so we're in this time where old systems are falling away, new systems are asking to be coming in, and we're moving away from this very oppressive, authoritarian, dictatorial, sort of tyrannical rule of like, this is how it shall be, because this group of people are benefited from this. And we're moving into a period of time, which is what the human experience is intended to be, which is how can we create a collaborative experience, an interactive social experience that is for the greater good of all? And we're at this very critical point of making decisions of how we're going to do that. But in order to do that, a lot of the old stuff has to be stripped away. It's a little bit like renovating an old house. You think, we'll take down this paneling and then paint the wall. And you take down the paneling and you go, okay, gonna have to redo this, gonna have to do some because this is, people talk about it, gutting the house or whatever. So that's intense. It's really intense.
It
But
is.
it's also knowing. So when I look at it too, that's the big thing. But then the other thing is, the way in which this is all unfolding is happening in a way that it may not feel like this on the external level. We look out and we look at all the kind of crazy things that just seem to be happening. I mean, I'm not even talking about the kind of things that are going on in governments. Let's talk about what's going on with the earth. earthquakes here, earthquakes there, unprecedented atmosphere. I had never heard of the term. I am a weather nerd because I hike and I camp, and I need to be, out. I need to, I use all that NOAA weather stuff is very important to me in terms of keeping me safe when I'm out on the trails. I never heard the term atmospheric river. I'm like, what is that? Where did that come from? And apparently
Right.
they have existed. It's just that they don't usually come down low enough that we experience the fallout from them. I know you had some of that where you
Well,
were
I'm
like,
in California, so I feel like over the past 2 years or 3 years, we've become very familiar with that term.
I'm like, what is that? And it is literally, I kid you not, it is literally an air current where there is so much moisture. It's like flowing like a river. So but also so there's a lot that's happening. This I also believe very much in the connection to Mother Earth as an organic consciousness, right? And just as when our body when we have not treated our body well, there are things that have to be brought into balance, right? So there's this there are ways of looking at, whether you're pulling cards, whether you're looking at an astrological pattern, whether you're connecting with the Palladian guides, you're connecting with your own guides, or you're just out in the yard playing with your dog, because that's where you find that peace and joy. There are ways of using tools to sort of help us. What is the gift in all of this? When you pull the Tower card from from a tarot deck, it's like, you know what am I going to do with this? It's like, whoa. It's like, oh, okay, you can like run and try and hide, but the moment's going to come no matter what. And to me, the other aspect of that, the card that comes there's a card the card that comes way before that is the awakening card. What change the perspective? It's all about, when you listen to this. And when I was trying to deal with the whole concern about what's going to happen with the National Weather System and this all of the life-saving services that they provide, what was the story I was telling myself in my head? What is the narrative? So part of this is also finding the tools that help you find what else is there, because besides the story of this big transformation, in those same patterns that I see in the astrological patterns, there's also this sign of renewal and hope and new energy and expansion of consciousness and uplifting of energy, a sense bringing together a unity for a greater, higher good. So it's looking for those ways in which we can flip that narrative, change the story we're telling ourselves about what this fear is bringing up for us. What are some of the ways that you do that for yourself?
Well, I think of like I'm a resilient person. I feel like I have a lot of grit, but resilience requires rest and recovery. So prioritizing that is vital. So I think you and I both joke about blanket forts a lot. I'll text pictures from my blanket fort frequently, but having that time to kind of cocoon and restore my energy, or to take a warm shower, to savor a cup of tea, like those little moments of restoration are vital, particularly when we're like in the midst of the resistance. Like I think that rest is a form of resistance, joy and laughter are a form of resistance. These restorative measures are really vital. So however any of our viewers can connect to their practice self-care and connect to their joy even in moments of darkness, it's absolutely vital. And when we do coming at challenges from a place of restoration, it's so much easier to connect with that light and that hope and that positivity than it is when we're worn down and tired. Personally, self-care is the first priority almost always. You can never pour from an empty cup. So prioritizing that is absolutely my number one. What are simple ways that you recommend people shifting out of fear and into a place of trust?
It goes back to a practice that I've sort of brought up in different contexts throughout the episode so far. And the first thing is acknowledging it. Is acknowledging that there is a fear here. What is the fear? Not being afraid to look at it. It's like when you pull the nine of air, the nine of swords out of the throw deck and you stuff it back in because you don't, and you shuffle and it comes back up again. And you're like, okay, what's the nightmare I'm dealing with?
I got that the other day. I can definitely relate to that.
Yes, yes. And so it's, being acknowledging that it's there. But once we acknowledge it, before we try to do anything with it, first just breathe back to that center. You know, breath is life. Breath is the reminder that I am alive. I am here. You talk about resilience. I am here. I've made it through all of the other crazy things that have happened in my life up to this point. I'm here now. So I know that I have a purpose for being here now. So let's connect with that. So it's that breathing, just coming down and grounding. And if you need to get out of the context, or like I said, I do walking meditation, sometimes just going for a walk. Sometimes I will be working on something will hit me, I'll come up on the computer, I'm like, oh, and I'm like, you know what? I need to go do a load of laundry. I just go do something, or go wash the dishes, or empty the dish, or just do something. It's a little bit of a distraction, not to sort of totally numb myself, but to just get myself out of my head and change the script a little bit. And then coming back and grounding and centering and breathing and naming the fear. I had a yoga teacher who did fascinating meditation where we sat down and said, okay, whatever emotion it is that you're struggling to deal with, whether it's anger or depression or fear, whatever it is, you're going to sit. She created this beautiful safe space. You're all felt safe. You're in this safe space, and she said, your emotion is going to come in and present itself to you. What is it? What is it like, right? And in the case of what I was working with, it was like a tiger that came in. I thought tigers were beautiful, but also very dangerous. And it kind of walked around and just kind of looked at me, and I'm like, you know, I'm afraid of this, and inviting it to sort of sit down. So sitting with the emotion and inviting it to visit with you and tell you, what do I need to know? What do I need to know? If you need to be in the blanket for it, you know, put yourself in that safe space wherever you need to be to feel that. But it's like, what is it? What do I need to know in order to be able to tell myself, how to what is this fear trying to tell me? And it might be this is this and da da da. If you play it out all the way, if you really let it run, your imagination or more, it usually ends up with like, and then the world is going to end. And there's parts where I'm like, okay, I'm down for that right now because it's pretty crazy. But if you really play it out, I think we see how extreme our imagination, the story is, and then we can bring it back in. So it's inviting that fear, that to rather than repressing, and inviting it to speak to you, to talk to you. What do you have to tell me? And then it's to shift the narrative. It's like asking for help. I feel like this is bigger than I can deal with. So send me something. Give me a sign, give me a color, give me a song, a happy movie to watch. Give me something to help me develop the strength and the courage to move forward.
That's awesome.
How about for you?
Well, I love that you're saying ask for help, and it's not just trusting our angels or the universe and asking for that energetic help, but trusting the actual people around us is so important now more than ever, or in times of darkness more than ever. Having a community and having people that you can rely on is so pivotal. Another thing that works for me is breaking that routine. So you mentioned laundry and kind of like doing little chores to distract yourself, but just breaking the routine and changing the order of things, and that has a way of breaking up your energy and then inviting new energy to kind of flow and shake things up, which is really important. So sometimes I'll change the order of when I like shower in the morning, and I'll eat before I shower instead of eating after. Or even this morning I was like in my head and anxious, and I did laundry just like you mentioned. So changing up that routine and that order is important. I mentioned this in a previous episode, but creating a timeline or a journal of the times where the universe has conspired in your favor, and when things have worked out for you and you've conquered challenges. So often we forget about the times where we succeeded, and instead we focus on the times where we haven't. But when we all of a sudden put pen to paper and we remember all of those successes in our life, it can shift our energy and allow us to really let go of control and to trust the process. And then the last thing I'll mention, I think you know this more than anyone probably, is I time block. Block allows time blocking and really being mindful about my calendar and how I block out my time. It allows me to just focus one step at a time and be fully present. I'm not going to get bogged down by the 15 or 20 things that I have to achieve today. I'm not going to think about what deadlines I have next week, but I'm just going to be really present in the activity I'm doing now. And that brings me a sense of peace because I'm not making up stories about the future. I'm really just here right now. And that allows me to focus on the light. So, any closing words?
I'm going to offer people an exercise that I think is kind of along the lines of journaling, particularly if you are someone who perhaps is more drawn to sort of using imagery, or art or whatever. A really simple thing to do is to draw a circle. If you need it to be perfect, go get a plate or something like that and draw it on the paper so you don't get hung up on that. And then just make that little wavy line in the middle so that you can create the shape of a yin yang. If not, you can just create, and I don't like necessarily drawing a straight line down the middle. I like to think about the sort of flow. So you can just create just a little bit of a wavy line that divides that circle into two sections. And what you're going to do is one side is going to be the energy of the light, and one side is going to be the energy of shadow. And on the shadow side, what you can do is write down words that you associate with shadow. For example, when I did this, I thought about night, and I said nighttime and stars, but also other things, doubt, grief, things that are there. But then in that shadow side, and then after you've got a number of things written down on that side, or you can do this with each one as you think of it. When I think about the nighttime, the gift of nighttime is in the shadow. The gift of the night is stars, and the stars are light. So I wrote that on the light side, and the moon at night. The gift of grief was the knowing that if I'm grieving, there is love there. You don't grieve for the things you don't love. And so the gift of grief is that memory of love. So I wrote that down. And so you write down the gift of the things that are those things in the shadow side bring you. Fear, the gift of fear sometimes is survival. And you put those words on the light side. And then on the side that you've designated for the shadow side, I just took like a really light like pencil or whatever, like a light art pencil, whatever, and just shaded that in to remind myself that these things are hidden, but they're there, and the things that are hidden in the shadows are still there in the light. So that was just a kind of fun, simple exercise. And I thought that might be something people would like to do.
I love that. I'm going to do that as soon as we hang up.
Awesome.
Our next episode is about love, self worth, and relationships, healing and attracting higher vibrations. So I can't wait to see you
Good
next
one.
time.
Bye, everyone.